This truck can pull 40,000 pounds, but most people have no idea it exists. And if you think you know which trucks revolutionized towing, you're probably wrong about at least half of them. What if I told you that the pickup truck sitting in your driveway today can tow more than an 18-wheeler from the 1950s? We're about to dive into the 15 pickup trucks that didn't just change the game. They completely rewrote the rules of what's possible when it comes to hauling heavy loads. Some of these trucks broke records that stood for decades. Others introduced technology that every truck uses today, and a few were so ahead of their time that people thought they were crazy. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the towing wars between Ford, Chevy, and Dodge have pushed these machines to limits that would make your grandfather's work truck look like a toy. But here's what most people don't realize. The story of pickup truck towing isn't just about bigger engines and stronger frames. It's about understanding physics, engineering compromises, and the relentless pursuit of solving problems that seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Every truck on this list faced skeptics who said it couldn't be done, engineers who had to invent new solutions, and customers who demanded more capability without sacrificing comfort or reliability. Let's start with a truck that most people forget even existed, the 1957 Chevrolet Cameo Carrier. This wasn't just another pickup truck. It was the first truck that made people realize pickups could be more than just farm equipment. The Cameo Carrier could tow 4,500 pounds, which doesn't sound like much today, but back in 1957, that was enough to pull a fully loaded travel trailer or a decent-sized boat. More importantly, it looked good doing it. The Cameo Carrier had fiberglass bedsides that were smooth as silk, and it came in colors that matched Chevy's passenger cars. The interior wasn't just functional, it was actually comfortable. You could take your family on vacation and not feel like you were driving a work truck. This might seem obvious now, but in 1957, it was revolutionary. Before the Cameo Carrier, pickup trucks were painted in basic colors like black, white, or maybe dark green. They had rubber floor mats and bench seats that felt like sitting on a wooden plank. But the real breakthrough with the Cameo Carrier wasn't just the styling, it was the engineering underneath. Chevrolet engineers realized that if they wanted people to use trucks for towing recreational vehicles, they needed to solve the stability problem. Early pickup trucks had short wheelbases and light rear ends, which made them dangerous when pulling heavy loads. The Cameo Carrier had a longer wheelbase than previous Chevy trucks, and it used a different rear suspension design that kept the truck level when loaded. The engine options were also significant. The base engine was a 235 cubic inch inline-six that made 140 horsepower, but the real star was the optional 283 cubic inch V8 that produced 185 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. This was the same engine that powered Chevy's Corvette, and it gave the Cameo Carrier performance that rivaled passenger cars. When you combine that power with the improved chassis design, you had a truck that could tow 4,500 pounds and still accelerate smoothly onto highway on-ramps. The Cameo Carrier also introduced the concept of truck packages. You could order it with different trim levels, option packages, and even air conditioning. This was unheard of in pickup trucks at the time. Chevrolet sold the Cameo Carrier for only 3 years, from 1955 to 1957, but it proved that there was a market for trucks that combined capability with comfort. People started buying trucks not just for work, but because they wanted to. That shift in thinking changed everything. But here's where things get interesting. In 1961, Ford dropped a bomb on the truck world with the F-100 Unibody. This truck was so different that people didn't know what to make of it. Instead of having a separate frame like every other truck, the F-100 Unibody had the bed and cab built as one piece. This made it lighter and smoother to drive, but it also made it stronger for towing. The Unibody could handle 5,000 pounds, and because of its design, it distributed the weight better than traditional trucks. The Unibody construction was actually borrowed from passenger car engineering. Ford's engineers realized that if they integrated the bed and cab into one structure, they could make the truck lighter without sacrificing strength. The traditional separate frame design meant that the truck had to carry the weight of both the frame and the body. The Unibody design eliminated that redundancy. This weight savings meant that the truck could carry more payload and tow more weight while using the same engine. But the unibody design also solved another problem: noise and vibration. Traditional trucks with separate frames had a lot of flex between the cab and bed, which created squeaks, rattles, and vibrations. The unibody design eliminated most of these problems because everything was connected as one solid structure. This made the truck much more comfortable to drive, especially when pulling heavy loads. The F100 unibody came with several engine options, but the most popular was the 292 cubic inch inline-six that made 175 horsepower and 286 pound-feet of torque. This engine was specifically designed for truck applications, with a focus on low-end torque rather than high RPM power. The result was a truck that could start moving heavy loads from a dead stop without straining the engine or transmission. Ford also introduced several towing-specific features with the unibody. The truck came with a factory-installed trailer hitch receiver, which was unusual for the time. Most people had to have aftermarket hitches welded onto their trucks. The unibody also had an optional trailer brake controller, which allowed the truck's brakes to activate the trailer's brakes automatically. This was a huge safety improvement, especially when pulling heavy loads down hills. Ford only made the unibody for 4 years, from 1961 to 1963, but it proved that sometimes the craziest ideas work best. The unibody design was eventually abandoned in favor of traditional body-on-frame construction, but many of the engineering lessons learned from the unibody were incorporated into later Ford trucks. Then came 1973, and Dodge changed everything with the D-Series. This was the first full-size pickup truck that was specifically designed with heavy towing in mind. The D200 could pull 8,000 pounds right out of the box, and with the right options, it could handle even more. But the real game changer was the available 440 cubic inch V8 engine. This monster made 280 horsepower and 425 pound-feet of torque, numbers that were unheard of in pickup trucks at the time. The D-Series represented a fundamental shift in how Dodge thought about pickup trucks. Previous trucks were designed primarily for hauling cargo in the bed. The D-Series was designed from the ground up for towing. This meant that every component, from the frame to the cooling system to the transmission, was engineered to handle the stresses of pulling heavy loads. The frame was the foundation of the D-Series towing capability. Dodge engineers used computer modeling to analyze the stresses that towing places on a truck's frame. They found that traditional truck frames were actually overbuilt in some areas and underbuilt in others. The D-Series frame was designed with variable thickness steel, with extra reinforcement in the areas that experienced the highest stress when towing. But the real star of the D-Series was the engine lineup. The base engine was a 318 cubic inch V8 that made 230 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque. This was already more powerful than most truck engines of the time. But the optional 360 cubic inch V8 made 245 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. And at the top of the lineup was the legendary 440 cubic inch V8. The 440 V8 was actually based on Dodge's racing engines. It had a forged steel crankshaft, heavy-duty connecting rods, and a high-flow cylinder head design. The result was an engine that could produce massive amounts of torque at low RPMs, which is exactly what you need for towing. The 440 could pull an 8,000-pound trailer up a steep grade without downshifting, something that was impossible with smaller engines. Dodge also introduced several innovative towing features with the D-Series. The truck came with an optional tow package that included a heavy-duty cooling system, a transmission cooler, and a rear axle cooler. This was the first time a manufacturer had offered a comprehensive towing package from the factory. The truck also came with an optional load flight, automatic transmission that was specifically calibrated for towing applications. Suddenly, contractors and farmers realized they could pull equipment trailers that previously required commercial trucks. The D-Series could tow construction equipment, livestock trailers, and even small RVs with ease. This opened up entirely new markets for pickup trucks and established Dodge as a serious player in the heavy-duty truck market. The late 1970s brought us the Ford F-150, and this truck deserves its reputation as a legend. When Ford introduced the F-150 in 1975, it filled the gap between the light-duty F-100 and the heavy-duty F-250. The F-150 could tow 6,500 pounds, which was perfect for the growing RV market. But the real genius was in the details. The F-150 was actually born out of government regulations. In 1975, the EPA introduced new fuel economy standards that applied to vehicles under 6,000 pounds. The F-100 fell into this category, which meant Ford had to make it lighter and more fuel efficient. But customers still wanted towing capability. The F-150 was Ford's solution. It was classified as a heavy-duty truck, so it didn't have to meet the fuel economy standards, but it was still light enough to be practical for everyday use. Ford gave the F-150 a longer wheelbase than the F-100, which made it more stable when towing. The standard wheelbase was 131 inches, but Ford also offered a long bed version with a 145-inch wheelbase. This longer wheelbase dramatically improved the truck's stability when pulling heavy trailers. The physics are simple. The longer the wheelbase, the less likely the truck is to be pushed around by the trailer. The engine lineup was impressive for the time. The base engine was a 300 cubic inch inline-six that made 150 horsepower and 243 pound-feet of torque. This engine was bulletproof reliable and had plenty of low-end torque for towing. The optional 302 cubic inch V8 made 140 horsepower and 239 pound-feet of torque. But the real towing engine was the 390 cubic inch V8 that produced 201 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. Ford also upgraded the rear axle and added trailer-specific cooling systems. The F-150 came with a standard 8.8-inch rear axle, which was much stronger than the 7.5-inch axle used in the F-100. The truck also came with an optional auxiliary transmission cooler and a heavy-duty radiator. These cooling upgrades were essential for towing in hot weather or mountainous terrain. But perhaps the most important innovation was the F-150's marketing approach. Ford positioned the truck as a personal use vehicle, rather than just a work truck. The advertising campaigns showed families using F-150s to tow boats, RVs, and horse trailers. This helped establish the idea that pickup trucks could be lifestyle vehicles, not just commercial vehicles. These features became standard across the industry because Ford proved they worked. In 1988, Chevrolet introduced the GMT 400 platform, and with it came the C/K series that would dominate the 1990s. The C1500 and K1500 could tow up to 8,000 pounds, but the real breakthrough was the available 6.2-liter diesel engine. This was the first time a light-duty pickup truck offered a diesel option, and it changed how people thought about towing. The GMT 400 platform was actually a complete redesign of Chevrolet's pickup truck line. The company had been using the same basic truck design since 1973, and by the mid-1980s, it was showing its age. Ford and Dodge were gaining market share with newer, more refined trucks. Chevrolet needed to respond with something revolutionary. The GMT 400 trucks used a new frame design that was both stronger and lighter than the previous generation. The frame was made from high-strength steel and used computer-optimized cross-sections to maximize strength while minimizing weight. This allowed the truck to carry more payload and tow more weight without sacrificing fuel economy or performance. But the real story was the engine lineup. The base engine was a 4.3-liter V6 that made 160 horsepower and 235 pound-feet of torque. This was the first V6 engine offered in a full-size Chevrolet pickup, and it provided good fuel economy for customers who didn't need maximum towing capability. The optional 5.0-liter V8 made 175 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque, while the 5.7-liter V8 produced 210 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. But the real breakthrough was the 6.2-liter diesel engine. This engine was developed specifically for light-duty truck applications, and it represented a major technological achievement. The diesel got better fuel economy than the gas engines, especially when pulling heavy loads. More importantly, It had 143 horsepower and 257 pound-feet of torque, with most of that torque available at low RPMs. This made it perfect for pulling heavy trailers up hills. The diesel engine also changed the economics of towing. With gas engines, fuel costs could be a major factor when towing long distances. The diesel engine could achieve 20 to 25 miles per gallon even when towing, compared to 8 to 12 miles per gallon for gas engines. This made long-distance towing much more affordable for recreational users. The GMT 400 platform was so successful that Chevrolet used it for over a decade. The basic design was continuously refined and improved, but the fundamental architecture remained the same until 1999. This longevity allowed Chevrolet to amortize the development costs over a long period, which kept prices competitive. The 1990s were when the real towing wars began. In 1994, Dodge introduced the second-generation Ram, and it was unlike anything people had seen before. The Ram 1500 could tow 8,400 pounds, but it was the available 5.9-liter Magnum V8 that made headlines. This engine made 230 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque, numbers that put it ahead of both Ford and Chevy. The second-generation Ram was actually a desperate attempt by Chrysler to save their truck division. By the early 1990s, Dodge trucks had fallen to third place in sales, far behind Ford and Chevrolet. The company was losing money on every truck they sold, and there was serious consideration of shutting down the truck division entirely. Instead, Chrysler made a bold decision to completely redesign the Ram from the ground up. They hired designers from the car industry and gave them a mandate to create a truck that looked different from anything else on the road. The result was the big rig styling that made the Ram instantly recognizable. The truck had a bold, aggressive appearance that appealed to customers who wanted their truck to make a statement. But the styling wasn't just for show, it was functional too. The larger grille provided better cooling for the engine, which was essential for towing heavy loads. The higher hood line allowed for a larger engine compartment, which made maintenance easier. The wider stance improved stability when carrying heavy loads or pulling trailers. The real breakthrough with the Ram was the chassis design. Dodge engineers realized that previous trucks had been compromised by trying to serve too many different purposes. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing as it helps me grow my channel immensely.